I'm Frank Reese, the owner of the store, and we're really pleased to welcome Murray Browne here. I'm a big fan of his new book, The Bookshopper. The reason I'm holding this mic and the reason I'll clip it to Murray is this is being taped for the Atlanta Forum Network, which is an online affiliate of public broadcasting. So within a week or so, tonight's reading will be online. And after Murray talks about his book, reads from his book, he'll take questions. And Murray, if you would repeat the question from the audience before answering it so that the video will document what question you're answering. Briefly, I want to say about Murray's book, like him, my life with books was sort of an accidental thing. I was just out of college, living in San Francisco, looking for a job, thinking about graduate school, and stumbled into an antiquarian bookstore in the worst part of San Francisco. And that was 25 years ago. And I never went back to grad school and never have done anything else. But one of the themes that runs throughout Murray's book is the difficulty and the changing nature of the used book business. And we certainly have found that. Ironically, one of the things that we've done to stay alive and still be here is start selling new books and hosting author signings. So it's kind of a little ironic that Murray is going to be talking about his book about the unusual world of used books in a formerly used bookstore that's now largely a new bookstore. Without any further ado, I'm going to let Murray talk about his very fine book, The Bookshopper, Murray Browne.
You know, I wanted to, speaking of having new and used books, since it's a new book, kind of about used books, it's like, if you only pay full price for one book this year. So, this is about the Bookshopper, and the Bookshopper is really divided into three parts. The first part is about how I became kind of interested in books and stuff about myself. And the second part is about what kind of books I like, and if you went to a used bookstore or any good independent bookstore, what kind of books, in this personal, which books you should look for, you know. And it has this kind of a laundry list, and then it has kind of a chapter or two about humorous, or one called book shopping novels. That's people that go book shopping and they show up in novels and stuff. And the final is, what do you do with these books once you have them all? You know, and because you do have storage problems, and so we kind of address at the end things that we do with the books. So I'm going to read from two parts, and here comes, I think, Marcia. You just go around that way. So I don't mind. So I haven't got into the flow yet, so it's okay. So you don't have to follow along with the book because I do edit what I read. But because the first reading I did a couple weeks ago, there was a gentleman that was like reading the book or looking at the book while I was reading, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" You know. And I'm like, and then Denise told me, she said, "Oh, he was following along." And I said, "Well, I better give you a caveat if you follow along. Well, there's more into this book than I read. Let's put it that way." So, with those things in mind, we will. This comes from chapter 1. This is the opening introductory memoir, and it's called About the Author. And we'll give it a go. I'm naturally inclined to resort to self-deprecation when I describe myself. Although conventional marketing dogma says I should showcase my credentials and achievements, bragging about my triumphs is in direct conflict with the twin pillars of Midwestern virtue I grew up with: pathological humility and excessive modesty. Besides, on the surface, my life looks somewhat underwhelming. I grew up in Milford, Illinois, the buckle on the Corn Belt, a place where life revolved around farming, drinking, and attending church. Not such a dull place to grow up, really. For the youth, there were the temptations of finding out what Dad's Plymouth could do on those treeless highway slabs between the cornfields. For adults, there was the potential danger of farm machinery, horrible accidents involving grain augers or tractors flipping on their sides. In town, you'd see the survivors, like Civil War amputees, limping into Elmer's barbershop, no appointment needed, or chugging up to the drive-through window at the corner tap, open on Sunday, just like church. ordering a gin and tonic and a plastic cup to go. I lived in the country, but I wasn't a farm kid. My father was an accountant at the local canning factory. My grandmother told me that Dad was a big reader as a kid, but when I knew him, his book taste didn't range far from the Ballantine War series, and it seemed like a copy of Hitler Moves East, 1941 to 1943, was always on top of the toilet tank. My mother's favorite book was Gone with the Wind, which she gave me for my birthday. It didn't take me a few pages to realize that this was the #1 girls' book of all time. The male characters are imbeciles, totally preoccupied with fighting that silly war rather than paying attention to Scarlet. And further reading explained why many of the 7th and 8th grade girls had hugged copies of the Margaret Mitchell novel to their budding bosoms. Unlike the farm kids who were kept in the fields, I didn't grow up spending endless hours on a John Deere, and I was often alone. My mother would say I was good at entertaining myself, as I played Army in the runoff ditches that bordered our house, or created entire seasons of action with my football cards on the rec room rug. In school, I seemed more of a non-participating observer. Culturally, my options in rural Illinois were limited to piano lessons from an organ salesman with tobacco-stained hands or church sermons. As an athlete, I managed to set school records for bench warming, no small feat considering our meager enrollments. I suppose this set stage for my becoming a full-fledged exile and resident, a label I adopted for myself as a person who, on the surface, looks and acts normal, like your neighbor, but underneath is a corn-fed, Dylan-listening anarchist. Still, I was a likable fellow and entertained my classmates with humor. My humor was not that class clown variety, but a more sophisticated brand of stuff, like a spoof on our school newspaper, the product of an education that included poring over issues of Mad Magazine. I attended Indiana University, graduating with a degree in English and in radio and television. I couldn't say whether Indiana had a great English department or not, but I was introduced to dozens of writers who appealed to my sense of irreverence. I also met my future ex-wife, and for the next 20 years, I followed her circuitous career path, which took us to relatively uneventful places, such as Champaign, Illinois, Wichita, Kansas, where our older daughter was born, West Lafayette, Indiana, where our second daughter was born, Holland, Michigan, opted for a Good Shepherd Husky this time, and finally to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. In Tennessee, I realized that my set of marital problems had become like those unopened boxes of dishes or old toys that grow too large and heavy to carry anymore. Moving regularly for another person's career blocked the path to my own career, but I'm not whining here. First of all, I spent a lot of quantity as opposed to quality time with my daughters. Second, important jobs are time-consuming. My succession of dead-end jobs, such as night operator at a classical musical station or at the University Computing Center, gave me more time to read, think, and write than I would have had in most occupations. Also, during those long days at home with the children, there was some time to read during their naps and when I took them to the pool. I was hardly a micromanager or a perfectionist when it came to housekeeping. As a result, both daughters learned to do their own hair at very early ages. No matter where I lived or was employed, I found that books grew in their ability to connect me to something, a link to other cultures and ideas. It was comforting to know that I could talk books, even if I didn't have a PhD or live in an upscale neighborhood. I gleaned bits and pieces from enough books to hold a conversation with the most insatiable readers, no matter what their social or economic position. Moreover, books are relatively cheap entertainment. Over the years, I expanded my pleasure without busting my budget by browsing used bookstores instead of the full-price chains. This predilection has grown into a real, albeit quirky, passion for thinking about the many ways books can affect our lives, how and where we shop for them, the people we know who read them, the small passages that stick in our heads for years only to reappear at the oddest moments. The minds of book people are mosaics of ideas, thoughts, and phrases that have originated in books. In her collection of book-related essays, Ex Libris, Confessions of a Common Reader, 1998, Anne Fadiman writes that the heart of reading is not whether we wish to purchase a new book, but how we maintain our connections with our old books. I'm fascinated by how we hold and shape these fragments, how they coalesce into what I call my book shopper state of mind. My book shopper state of mind is not to be confused with that of the Uber book shopper, the book collector, or the bibliophile. You may recognize these types. The Uber shopper is the person who simply likes to shop for bargains on anything just to save money. Actually, reading the book is irrelevant. This shopper cannot resist the lure of getting down on hands and knees to go through boxes of books at garage sales or queuing up early to beat the rush at the annual library book sale. Then there's the book collector, who relishes autographed first editions of contemporary writers or 17th century rarities that look ready to crumble at the touch of a hand. These collectors don't necessarily engage the written word either. A funnel cake can wreak hell on James Joyce's first edition. Besides, book collecting is an expensive hobby. The third type of book shopper is the bibliophile, those book-reading junkies who shoot through a book a day. Their reading habits are noble, but I wouldn't want to use their bathroom. Admittedly, I'm part Uber shopper, part book collector, and part bibliophile, but I'm basically a person who obsesses on moderation. I was an Uber shopper until I realized that I was buying more books than I'd ever read in my lifetime. Now I refrain from making a beeline to every used bookstore I discover. While walking along the street, I avoid making contact with even the most pathetic table of cheap hardbacks whose tattered covers hide their broken book lives. Still, I do have my impulsive moments and the credit cards to prove it, bills to prove it. As far as being a collector, there are certain authors I like well enough to collect hardback versions of their work, because in general, hardcovers are more durable and resistant to yellowing than paperbacks. If I had the money, I'd drop a couple $100 on a hardback copy of V 1963 just to round out my Thomas Pynchon collection, but I haven't done so yet. Nowadays, I'm a lame excuse for a bibliophile because my annual goal is slipped to reading 20 good books a year, which may seem to be a surprisingly low figure to some of you. I wish I had more time, but I have other commitments: work, family, writing, and cleaning. I suspect that I will continue to reside in the intersection of all these book shoppers. It allows me to share a bond with these three basic types of book people, while not being sucked into just one way of looking at our relationships with books. It is my belief that all active readers have this melange of book shoppers in them, and thus my experiences may resonate with yours. I invite you to accompany me, a real-life character, as we troll through the backwaters of contemporary books and book culture, far away from the mainstream madness of booksellers, literary criticism, the term fin de siècle is only used once, and the book megastores. Along the way, I'll introduce you to a few books and authors you might be interested in pursuing on your own. Most of the books I refer to are not a challenge to find. You can find them at any reputable used bookstore, or if you prefer to forego the book hunting experience I still crave, they can be purchased readily online or ordered from your favorite bookstore. The last chapters of the book look at what you do with these books once you have them. What is their real value? A word of advice on how to read this book comes from the anti-war journalist Ray Mungo. In the introduction to his book, Famous Long Ago, My Life in Hard Times with Liberation News Service, Mungo insisted that his readers take it slow, don't try to read it in one sitting, by all means get distracted from time to time, read it stoned, read it straight, give up and never finish it, it's all the same between friends, take care of your health, and get plenty of rest. So that's the first one. So, getting dry up here. So the second one is books as gifts. And let's see if I can find it. I like the lights though, because I yellow in instructions to the reader, and so if it's dark, I'm lost. But if it's good, then all right. So this second is from chapter 12. This is called Books as Gifts, and it starts out with a quote from Joe Queenan, who's a book critic, and basically the essay is called, I think, Wish List, No More Books, and the essay is pretty much, he says, if you buy a book for somebody else, It's like buying underwear for somebody else. So that's the premise of Joe Queenan's work. So, and it's referred to here a little bit. So this is chapter 12, Book as Gifts. If book giving is presumptuous, as book critic Joe Queenan implies, might there be some dispensation given to those who forego giving new books and instead redistribute used or remaindered copies? This is the dilemma I have pondered since the day I was in a campus bookstore and overheard a guy boasting to his female companion, "I'm really good at picking out hidden gems for my friends." He stumbled across a travel book and said, "Eureka, here's a good one. I bet so-and-so would like it. $5. Then the guy set the book down and didn't buy it. I considered the possible rationales behind that action. Did he have a problem with appearing to be cheap? If this were the case, couldn't he have removed the price tag and stuck a bow over the gummy residue? Maybe his friend wasn't worth $5. A sad commentary on the value of that friendship. On the other hand, perhaps he realized that a consumable gift, such as a bag of nuts or a practical one like windshield washer fluid, would be more appreciated. Despite the fact that I enjoy pondering these possibilities, none of this deters me from giving away books. I'm just not so cavalier about it. I believe, in the words of Maxine Hong Kingston, it takes skill to give gifts. Although I did remove the shameful 40% off supermarket tag for Rhett Butler's People 2007 when I picked it up as a Christmas gift for my mother, who had been waiting for a half a century for a decent sequel to Gone with the Wind. I usually leave price tags on books. My rationale for leaving any price reduction notations in place is quite simple. Just as I'm wary of getting books that I didn't specifically ask for, I'm equally aware that close friends may feel a sense of obligation to read something I purchased for them. So as I hand over the gift book, I say, "Look, I only paid $2.99 for this. So if you don't like it, pitch it." This takes away most of the pressure on the recipient to read the book, and he or she can accept the gift as a suggestion, not a directive. Of course, it's never quite simple as it sounds, and I have wrestled with several variations of the book-giving dilemma. Recently, I needed a Christmas gift for one of the family boyfriends, who had just graduated mid-year with a bachelor's degree in computer science. My first thought was to go for the consumables. In his case, maybe a frozen pizza. But when I figured this kid had a busy mind, he might enjoy Gödel Escher Bach, the much-acclaimed tome by Douglas Hofstadter that compares the works of mathematician Kurt Gödel, the artist M.C. Escher, and the composer Johann Sebastian Bach. Heralded as a classic back when it was first published in 1979, Gödel Escher Bach is still in print. I owned a used copy that I'd picked up for under $5 in an impulsive moment when I thought I needed something to dramatically improve my mind. It would have been easy for me to part with such a book under the circumstances, but I wondered if I was being a little cheap, even for one of the transient family boyfriends. And I didn't want to burden him with an unsolicited book. I decided to give him a new copy of the book, but I left the gift receipt inside for an easy exchange. While he opened his gift, I studied his reaction for feigned pleasure. If I thought he was just being polite, commendable to think that he liked me enough to mislead me, I'd strongly suggest that he just return it and find something else. If his reaction was a bit warmer, I'd suggest, "Hey, I got an extra used copy at home you can have. And thank you for freeing up some valuable shelf space. Take the new copy, exchange it for a couple of Lindt chocolates or a DVD of anime." Either I was completely fooled or he was fascinated by the book. In any case, I'm still stuck with my used and unread copy of Gödel Escher Bach. All this used book giving assumes, of course, that any used book that you give doesn't have a heartfelt inscription tattooed on the inside cover or a title page that reveals the fluid nature of relationships. If you read a handwritten inscription that says, "This is my favorite book, dear friend, I hope you like it," or "To my darling son, happy birthday, you mean so much to me," you know that things have changed in that relationship for better or probably worse. It is for these reasons that I rarely inscribe a book when I give it as a gift. I don't like to restrict its potential for commerce. It seems hypocritical of me to give a friend a book and hurt his or her ability to unload it with the greatest possible ease. Conversely, when someone gives me such an inscribed book, I keep it well beyond its usefulness. A good example is my copy of Dick Butkus's autobiography, Butkus, Flesh and Blood. I do not keep this book because I need to constantly refer to descriptions of how the Hall of Fame Chicago Bear linebacker turned some ball carrier's shoulder into oatmeal, or how he made a quarterback's head recoil. Rather, I keep it because it holds my brother's note on how he waited in line to get the sneering Butkus's autograph. At this stage, you might be thinking, pity the fool who tries to buy Murray a book. And on the surface, this is true. For the most part, rather than ending up sounding as irascible as Joe Queenan, I try to discourage people from giving me surprise books as gift. I do this either by providing them, if asked, with a specific book suggestion, title, author, condition, or I mention that I am much more in need of clothes, an area of expression where I am far less particular and have plenty of room for improvement. Nevertheless, Queenan makes several good points in his diatribe against giving books. One is which that all serious readers keep lists of books that we hope to read in our lifetime. And there's a finite number of books that we can expect to read. He calculates that number as 2,138. He says that every time someone gives us a book we really must read, that challenges our list. Queenan does admit that not all gift books are bad, citing as examples the crime detective novels his sisters gave him. For me, I do not want to limit what gets foisted my way, but I don't want to eliminate, I do want to limit what gets foisted my way, but I don't want to eliminate those exquisite moments when the surprise literary gift has been a connecting moment to another person. There are certain books, ranging from The Golden Book of the Civil War, 1960, from my parents, to Oscar Huelos' Mr. Ives' Christmas, 1995, from my longtime companion Denise, to Siegfried Krakauer's Theory of Film, The Redemption of Physical Reality, 1960, a gift from my daughter Cynthia for my 52nd birthday. These have stood out along the book gifting trail. I only hope that a significant percentage of the books I have subjected others to over the years have brought some pleasure to the recipients. My advice is this: if you must buy books for others, put some serious thought into it, both the recipient and the book, and then ignore the fear that I and Joe Queenan might have instilled in you. And if you need a little extra value-added reassurance that you're doing the right thing, be sure to include with your gift book an accompanying bookmark, preferably something that can't miss, like a supermarket gift card. That's it. Thank you. So, well, there's an epilogue to the gift. You know, you write these things, and then there's an epilogue, of course. So, this aforementioned temporary boyfriend is still with us. And he, last Christmas, so he gets me a book, and it's The Book Thief. I go, oh, that's nice. So, thanks for the gift and whatever. So I finally take the book home, and it won a young adult winner. It went for young adults. Yeah, I'm saying I'm not criticizing. There's a lot of good young adult books. But what I'm saying is, but that wasn't really what I was looking for. But there's a happy ending to this story because my goddaughter, teenager, hadn't got her a book yet for Christmas. She loved it. I'm off the hook. He really helps me out on this. So that's kind of funny how I always, now I get books like, a book of matches and, the book Men Who Love Books. I get all kinds of stuff like that once in a while. So there's a happy kind of epilogue to that story. So now we'll just do questions, or any questions that you may have about the book or anything. Yes?
Could you share a book signing experience that was being memorable for you?
A book signing experience, since it's just this one and the one I did 2 weeks ago. So,
Or book signing.
one I went to.
No, yours.
Oh.
Well, I mean, you have not just had only two, well then you can, talk about another one.
Oh yeah, I should really, two's not really there, unless there's something going to happen tonight. I don't So I guess the question was any book signing experience, but really haven't had anything to start with. I think I've been going to a lot of book signings. Frank sees me hanging out there, and I find them kind of interesting to go. One of the best ones I went to was Rick Atkinson, who did one at the Decatur Public Library, and he wrote those, he's doing that World War II trilogy, and he was very gracious, and we had a book signed for Denise's father, and he wrote, who was also served in World War II, and he wrote just a really heartfelt inscription, and Denise, she took it up to him in New York, and he was just really moved by someone who understood what he had done in the war, and for him to take the time out and write such a thoughtful thing was very impressive. And most of us said the authors are pretty good. I may go to a lot of readings and buy the books, but I don't get many of them signed.
Well, what's his name again?
Rick Atkinson. Rick Atkinson.
Chandler Burr.
Oh yeah, Chandler Burr was that's right. Chandler Burr, he's right up there. So we went to Chandler Burr, not this last year, but 2007, and he's the perfume critic for the New York Times. Yeah, the perfume critic for New York Times. And so he pulled everybody in, got them in the first 3 rows, and he had perfume samples. And he made people pass them around and guess what they were smelling and stuff like that. And Denise, of course, she's right on it. She's got a great nose. So, he gets her attention, right there. But there was a lot of good people passing around and sniffing. But the fact that he really embraced the articles, embraced the audience and the way they got into it was very impressive. So those are a couple that stick out in mind. Any other questions? Yes?
I have 2 more questions.
Yes.
Number 1, what's your favorite used bookstore? And then to go on with that, I always find that I kind of enjoy used bookstores more when I go to them in New York or New Orleans or somewhere I don't live, where I feel like it's an ambiance of different reflections when visiting used bookstores across the country or in other countries.
One of the ones, 2 of them that come to mind, I really liked Book Eddie in Knoxville, and that's and they don't like me. They never say hello to me or anything. No, they're very good bookstore, but it's a huge used bookstore, and he really gets a lot of good books in there, and his stock turns pretty regularly, and I think that's kind of a key for used bookstores. So if they don't get new stock in and new stuff in, then it's the same old stuff. So I think that one's, and then there's the Jane Addams bookstore in Champaign, Illinois, which I like, and it is like a house kind of stuck in the middle of downtown Champaign, and their skin hasn't seen the light of day, but they have, again, it's pretty well a nice stock. You can always find some interesting books that you're just not going to stumble around to, and so those are a couple, and I've been going to both of those. Every time I go to Champaign, I stop there before I go visit my mother. So that was both parts. Did I answer both parts?
I think my other question was going to bookstores in different areas and kind of find them different. I just haven't reflected on it a lot, but I feel like I always find something a little bit more different or interesting when I go to places. Of course, I go to Acapella and other places in Atlanta, but going to ones in different.
I haven't seen a real regional difference, so not to me, but that doesn't mean there isn't one, but it just, I've been up to the Strand and Seattle's a good book town, and you kind of go, I went to look for Ray Mungo, who I mentioned here a little bit, and he's from Seattle originally. I don't think he lives there anymore, but I went up to Seattle and is Ray Mungo around? Has anybody got any Ray Mungo books? And what are you talking about? But then in Cosmic Prophet, he had a big used bookstore in the 70s, and so yes.
Do you also hunt libraries, or is there something special about the ownership of the books?
Do I go to libraries, or do I go to library sales?
Do you borrow books from libraries?
Yes, I do. But I find myself, if I'm spending, a lot of times I'll check a library book out that I don't really think I want to read that much of, and I'll check a book out to get a kind of a sample. But generally speaking, if I'm spending hours and hours over a book, I want to have it for a while. That doesn't mean I don't get rid of them. I'm kind of a person who does get rid of some of their books and stuff like that. But I do, if I'm going to spend time with a book and really get engaged with it, I want to be able to mark it up or write myself. Because I was working on I'm reading Tom Mullen's book. You're familiar with him? He lives in Decatur now, and he wrote this book about the plague, or pandemic, 1918, historical fiction. And I wanted to do some research about what it was like the plague, or why I liked the plague. They compared the book to the plague. So it was nice that you could just go to your bookshelf, pull off the plague, and write look at your note that you wrote about the plague, so you could find the quote you wanted. So I like to keep them. I like libraries, but I don't use them as much. Yes. No, that's not.
I'm sorry I missed the first half of your talk.
Oh.
But how many books do you own?
I've never really counted them. I think probably 300 or 400, I would guess. Not a lot. Not as many as you would think. And they're scattered. I don't have them like in a book library room. I have different shelves that have different meanings. I have like my baseball books are in the bedroom, and I have like a nice glass bookcase that my grandmother gave me. And I have my stars on there, my really nice hardbacks, or the ones I really want to show, the show books. And then I have a little shelf of all the famous writers and kind of stuff that I've met, kind of a little bit. And I have that. It's only a very small shelf. So those are I kind of spread it out. So that's why I can't really count them. I can't, they're all over, and they're, they come and go. But I probably 300 or 400.
Which also probably inspired you? Which authors have inspired you?
Well, I think this whole book is about. It's kind of a question of, does it inspire you, or does it, what ones connect to you? And I don't know if inspiration is like what.
A huge difference in your life.
I think Thomas Pynchon, for better or worse, has made a big impression. I think once you saw this alternative world, and you saw this kind of the way things connect, or he's all about paranoia and how things connect, and you realize that there's bigger plans in the world than you really realize. And I remember reading Gravity's Rainbow probably in the late 70s and the early 80s, and it really did change how I saw the world a little bit. I can't go chapter verse on, and he's hard to read, and I'm not recommending him here to anybody, and there's stuff in here about him, but I try to keep it down. So Pynchon kind of comes to mind a little bit, and also his tangent, he likes a lot of asides and apostrophe, he likes to talk off the cuff, and I kind of like to do that too, and it kind of fits with my mindset.
I'm going to buy your book tonight, so I've not read it.
Okay, that's fine.
But do you talk about cookbooks in your book?
No, but we have a cookbook expert nearby that can help us. No, I don't have cookbooks in it. But
so who's your cookbook expert?
This is Denise. She's the cookbook expert.
I just have a lot.
She has.
One in my storage unit. 23 boxes of. Oh my God!
I have one cookbook. I have one.
Which one is it?
It's kind of funny because my ex-wife was married. Her mother was a cookbook writer, and I'm going in Seattle, and I find one of her cookbooks, and I'm like, should I get this or not? Or I'd been divorced for several years. I said, but it was a dessert cookbook, and so I went ahead and got it. But then I bring it home, and Bonnie, that's my younger daughter, she kind of like, what are you doing with this? This is so bizarre, or something. So, that's how that worked.
So what's the name of the book?
It's the Wooden Spoon Dessert Book, I think, is the only cookbook I have. Is that?
What's the name of it? Oh, the Wooden Spoon.
Boy, I don't know if it's in the index or not, but that's my one cookbook.
I own over 5,000. So.
You have 5,000? Well, you could do, you could just do a bookshopper cookbook. So.
And then, every book that, an author publishes, there's always doors that open up because when publishing a book, have you ever experienced like a gigantic door being opened because of you writing the book?
There's not been a big door open yet. This book's been out, really came out and available, I think, late May or something like that. And it's still kind of, And I'll tell you, I work with Paul Dry. He's the publisher of this book out of Philadelphia. And Paul, he only does like 8 books a year. And he kind of says books kind of find their own way. And not that I'm not pushing it to find its own way, but I think books do kind of find their own way, and they find their way to their readers, or at least that's what I hope. I think you still have to do the standard marketing things that you would normally do, because there's a lot of ideas and things pushed at you all the time, and you have to try to push yours out a little bit. But on the other hand, I do have kind of faith in the reading ability. I think people pass on books that they like to other people. I think it's just the way that we connect. So, any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
Do you find yourself reading more nonfiction or fiction, and do you go back and forth between the two, or and has that changed any either as you've aged or as you've been in more bookstores?
I have really about 50-50 now with nonfiction to fiction, I think. I like a lot of, I do like nonfiction more than I did. Originally, and 12 years ago when this started, it was almost all fiction. And which is the advantage is because it kind of dates a little better, I thought. But now there's plenty of nonfiction mentioned in here, and I really got to the point where I like nonfiction the same. I don't read a lot of novels anymore, but I like collections of short stories. I like that. So about half and half.
Do you have trouble finding your way around your own library when you want to find a book?
Most of the time not, since I have this new non-Library of Congress, non-Dewey Decimal System where I have them categorized. There's a bookshelf that has bookshopper books, most of the ones that are mentioned. So if it's mentioned in this book, I keep it on one shelf. So I can just find them, and then I have the sports books in one place and the one. So I don't have too much trouble, but a lot of times if I have a problem, I just go down to the bookstore and grab it, or go to the used bookstore, or go to the library and pick it up for a short time. I think I keep like Mary Carr's Choir Club all the time, and it always ends up somewhere else. Somebody takes it, or I give it to some wayward teenager or something like that. So, any other questions? Well, I think that'll work. Thank you very much, and thanks Acapella for having me. I really appreciate it, and thanks for doing such a great job. Thank you.